Welcome to Office Hours. Whether you're new to the acupuncture profession or have been at it for decades, this is the place where we discuss all things Chinese medicine and more. Join Toby Daly, a seasoned acupuncturist of the Somme tradition, and Angelique Britt, a nurse turned acupuncturist who is brand new to the field, as they explore topics in and around the world of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. There's something for everyone here. Drop in anytime.
All right, everybody, welcome to Office Hours. We have the pleasure of having Dr. Eoin Gregory with us from Family Billing Solutions. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Can we begin by you giving us a bit of your background? Tell us a little about yourself.
Absolutely. So I am a retired chiropractor. I unfortunately got hurt way back when, and prior to doing what I do now, I was in clinical practice in New York. Loved seeing patients and working with patients every day. And I was an educator as well. I taught acupuncture students, I taught massage therapy students. So I just absolutely loved doing that. And when, unfortunately, when I got hurt, I could no longer practice and I couldn't teach anymore. A friend of ours who owns a medical billing company said, "Hey, you should start a billing company because there's a whole group of people who need help that her company was too big to handle, but could really benefit from someone who knows what they're doing and who's made all the mistakes, which is I like to say, oh, we've made all the mistakes." So we started a company. My wife's an acupuncturist back 8 years ago with the intent of treating practices and treating providers, not treating patients anymore, but with that, we wanted them to be better and to be awesome and to reach the height that they can or the height that they want to by taking the load off them that medical billing often creates the
hmm
stress and the all the anger that generates.
Yeah. How many providers groups do you have with you now that you help?
We have, I was just trying to figure out the other day because it's always in flux. We have about 130 providers that we bill across over 100 companies. A big chunk of those happen to be in Massachusetts,
hmm
which we happen to love Massachusetts, but I'm a little biased since I grew up there. Uh, and then but we have providers in 28 states currently, so we work across the country.
Great.
And
hmm
there's also a lot of providers who need help.
Yes, there are so many of us that need help. As I know that you know, but I tried doing this myself because I thought can't be that hard, right? So I enrolled in a couple of, insurance companies. This is a couple years ago, and I was like, I can figure this out. I can do this. And I lasted about 7 weeks before I reached out to you. I was like, help me, I need help. Because it's not that simple. It's not.
It's it's not that it's not simple. It's just a lot of work.
It's so much
It's a lot
work.
of work, and there's a lot of organization that goes into it. There's a lot of patience that goes into it. There's a lot of phone calls that go into it.
So many.
And I heard you were an acupuncturist, not a phone representative. So I
Yeah,
think your time is best spent in the treatment room, not on the phone.
agreed. Agreed. And I didn't realize how much time I would be spending on the phone. I really didn't. It was unbelievable. And so, yeah, it's been a blessing to have Family Billing Solutions helping out.
Oh,
But I think
but
you had talked about before, and I think one of the things that's important to get some perspective on is why you think someone should do their own billing before hiring a biller.
I think it's actually really important for solo practitioners, chiropractors, acupuncturists, anyone who's billing to bill on their own at least initially, because you generally have a little bit of time. You have that time factor if you don't have a full schedule. You also have the chance to take billing coding classes, which are really important because you really need to understand what the codes mean
hmm
because it has a big effect on your documentation, what you include in your documentation, what you don't include in your documentation. And it also gives you a perspective on how much work is involved. So if I have someone who's brand new who says, I want to work with you, I say, okay, for example, how busy are you? Well, I'm not that busy at all. I said, you need to take a billing and coding class and do it for yourself for a little bit. One, because usually they're not generating enough revenue to make it economically feasible for them to hire a biller unless, they're independently wealthy, in which case I'll be happy to help. But the other side of it is that experience of understanding how much work goes into the billing process. And the actual, we say billing, but it's not billing that's the issue. Billing is super easy. Submitting a claim, click, 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 claim sent. And that is easy. And it's everything else that's
Mm,
a pain. But it's worse than a pain. There's so many inconsistencies. There's so many battles to be fought. And if you're a provider, you're trained to treat patients. You're trained to help people heal. You're really not trained to help figure out their insurance, and you're also not trained to fight the battle, to file the appeals, call and get reconsiderations. And it was a really big issue, in particular in COVID, because there were no phone representatives. Everything took an hour, 2, 3 hours to make phone calls. It was just amazing amount of work. And so for providers, even though they weren't busy, they still couldn't reach anyone either. It was nuts.
yeah, I can imagine. Um, One of the things that I don't know. So when I came out of school and I took the billing and coding course, and I knew an acupuncturist, like, well, Toby, your practice is not insurance based at all, and so I had to make a decision. And as a newer one, I thought, well, there's a lot of acupuncturists out in this area. I think I have more of a chance to be viable financially if I accept some of the insurance plans. So I just decided I'm going to take all of the insurance plans, and I did. Like ultimately, once you were on board, I started out with a couple and then I took a whole bunch of them. And so when people are coming out of school, like, what do you think, as someone who's done work in this world, both in our sphere of medicine and in the insurance realm, what do you think are some important things for the new folks to be aware of, or even folks who've been in practice for a while that might consider opening the doors to insurance?
There's a lot of things to consider. The first thing is any advice given to you by another provider should be taken with a grain of salt unless they are some sort of expert. Because I think the biggest issue that we have is providers come on board and they say, well, so and so is making X number of dollars and this person is making X number of dollars.
Hmm.
And they're being told to bill in a way that's really not compliant and or technically fraudulent. And that's a big deal for us because we won't do that. We won't bill massive bills just because they're going to pay it, because it's not ethical, it's not moral, and it's illegal in many cases.
Hmm.
So if people come out of school and they say, what should I do? They should be leery of what their friends and or other acupuncturists tell them. They need to take a billing and coding class, first off, even if it's a short one, 2 hour one, even if it's free or whatever the case may be, even if they just go on some of the websites that are out there and learn a little bit about it and understand that there's a responsibility when you are billing insurance to meet certain requirements. So that's the first part. The second thing is understanding what a network participation agreement means. What does it mean when you go in network? And essentially, it means that you're agreeing to what that company pays for care and also the restrictions on what they don't pay for. And I don't want to go into individual specific insurance companies because that's outside the scope of this, but people get the impression that they can, oh, I can bill this code and the other code, and only to find out the insurance company only pays for 4 codes, the four
Hmm.
acupuncture codes, and they only pay for 2 units or 3 units. And so when you get this participation agreement, you need to make sure that the fee schedule's on there because that's actually interesting. You'll get a whole billing agreement to bill with that payer participation agreement, and there'll be no fee schedule attached.
Yes.
It was like, how does
Where
this
is that?
work?
Yes.
Where is that? Where is that? That's important.
Hmm.
And the other thing is not just the numbers. Say, oh, look at this. They pay this, they pay this, and they pay this. It's the payment policy on top of that. So an insurance company might have fees for exam codes, E&M codes, or they might have fees for therapies, but their reimbursement policy might say they pay a maximum of $100 a visit. They pay a maximum, which is not bad, a maximum of $50 a visit, a maximum of $41 a visit in California. And so no matter what you bill, it might add up to $150 based on the fee schedule. You need to read the details, the individual lines that say, oh, this is a global rate. And I think that's important because they need to understand what they're committing to, what they can't do, and particularly balance billing when you're in network. And also the other aspects is, when you decide, if you decide to leave, what your obligations are both to your patients and also to the insurance company. You can't just say, all right, I'm no longer taking insurance. There's a time period where you have an overlap, where you have to continue care and you have to treat these patients. Otherwise, it's patient abandonment. And I think that that aspect and the other aspect is important to know what the medical policy is. What does a plan cover? Because if you're, for example, with a company, and I'm not going to pick on individual insurance companies, but
Mm-mm.
the medical policy says they'll cover migraines and chronic tension headaches only. Would it make sense to be a network with that company? Not really, because what percentage of your patients come with migraine and chronic tension headaches? And the answer is not that many compared to low back pain, or not that many compared to other complaints, or depending upon if you have a specialty. Those are things that you really need to keep an eye on, because the insurance companies are in business to make money. They're not in business to pay
Mm-hmm.
providers lots of money. So you definitely got to look at those things. And if you don't understand them, if you're not an attorney, then spend a little bit of money and have an attorney look at them and give you some guidance or some advice, because you're making a legal contract. You're signing a legal contract to do something, and you have to be wary of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. And it takes a long time to read those contracts. They're
Oh my gosh,
long.
they're so boring.
They're so boring. They're so long. It's
Uh,
incredible.
so my wife Jessica, as an acupuncturist, is actually one of the people who reads everything, and I always make fun of her. Oh, you're going to read everything, going to read everything. Well, it turns out, if you don't read everything, you might miss something very important. And she's caught a couple things that were in the cracks about what certain things that were not covered. And we only cover 2 units of any given coded therapy or time service. Like suddenly, oh wait a minute, they're only going to pay for 2 units of acupuncture. And those types of things of reading right down to the details is hard
Yeah,
because we're not lawyers.
right. And it's created for the lawyer to look at, right?
We
Yeah,
we we want to know how the contract feels, not what the contract says.
correct. Yeah, totally. So when do you suggest someone looks for a biller?
That is a great question, and it varies provider to provider, insurance company to insurance company. But this is my advice for anything. When you get to the point where you're losing time to do the things you both enjoy and the things that generate revenue, then you need to consider having someone do it for you. So if you're spending every Friday night until midnight doing your billing rather than having movie night with the kids, or going on a date or going out with friends, then it's time to get someone to help. If you're losing 2 or 3 patient hours of care a week because you're doing your billing, then it's time to consider subbing it out and having someone manage it for you.
Okay. And so when someone is ready to hire a biller and they're not sure who to choose, I mean, I personally would say you, because you guys have been so helpful. But let's say that, they want to kind of play the field a bit. What are things to look for when hiring a biller?
Well, I appreciate all the love, but I will say that the biggest thing is finding someone who both feels like a good fit for you and also makes it quite clear what it's going to cost to work with them.
Hmm.
Because we see them saying, companies saying, we have this low rate, and if you don't read the contract and realize, well, a low rate, but you pay a certain number on top of it. So there's lots of little details within the agreement. The other thing you want to look at is, what is billing experience does the company have? There's lots of amazing billing companies that work with all different professions. Acupuncture is a tough profession to bill for, mainly because Jessica loves to use this expression, dermatology. Dermatology, you're covered. You just go and you're covered. But acupuncture, you can't just go and be covered. There's so much detail, and there's so many little things that are involved with making sure that the care that you provide is paid. And so, looking at different billing companies, do they have that experience? Do they have that knowledge? And then the other side of it is that how approachable are they? Was it hard to reach someone? Do they answer the phone? Will they talk to you on the phone? Is everything by email? And I think that for me, it, every claim matters, which is actually a problem because I focus too heavily on claims, but every claim matters because every claim is a unique person's care, and the ability for you to see that patient means that you have to have the care paid for. And if you have a biller who's just looking at numbers, it's like, oh, we have a 1% denial rate, we're okay. Or we have a 5% denial rate, we're okay. That doesn't translate well to small providers because that could be 5% of your income. That could be more
Mm-hmm.
than 5% of your income because a claim is just a number. It doesn't actually tell you how much that claim is worth. And so, for me, it's like you need to know that the person really wants to do it and is willing to fight for those claims to get them paid. And when, for example, the insurance company provides wrong benefits, is willing to do the appeals and isn't going to charge you extra for the appeals. Or if they are going to charge you extra, how much is an appeal going to cost? And what level of appeal will they do? So there's all these little things. And I think it's not a problem to necessarily pay for these little things as long as you know what to expect. And
Mm-hmm.
that's again, you go to buy a car and the car is X thousands of dollars, and then you go to the finance and then you realize it's another 20% more for all the other add-ons. And if you know that's going to happen, then you can deal with that. But if you go in thinking you're going to pay, X number of thousands of dollars, and suddenly now you're paying X number of thousand plus 20%, that's a huge difference. That's a huge amount of your practice. So I think one of the biggest things is transparency. How transparent is the company? The second thing is experience with acupuncture billing, which I mentioned before. And also manpower. Is it just one person working for herself? And does she have help? Does she have a lot of clients and she's overwhelmed? And how often is she submitting claims? How often is she following up on claims that aren't paid right? And there's nothing wrong with the individual who does the billing, except they go on vacation and they're not always available.
Mm-hmm.
And those things are important, especially when you're a small provider and someone calls you last minute. Oh my gosh, I put my back out. I need to come in to see you. Do you take my insurance? Question mark. And then the answer is maybe. And let's find out if there's coverage. Is there someone available to do that?
Yep.
And do they have that team?
Yeah. I must say that's one of the things that have been really helpful because there's a box that I can check on the website where it says rush. So in that kind of situation, I can check that box and usually someone gets back same day, sometimes the next day, which has been
We
really
we,
wonderful.
we shoot for 2 hours, but some days you just can't reach insurance companies.
Sometimes you
Holy
can't.
smokes.
No, it's really
No.
awful. I mean,
I
sometimes you
know.
guys even can't like you can't get through period despite multiple attempts.
We've had people hang on hold for 5 hours.
Yeah,
Like, so
that's
they'll have their phone on in the background and it's just on hold. And then at a certain point, the other company's phone system just cuts the call
yeah,
because it didn't pick up. And it's unconscionable that the insurance companies and the payers expect you to provide care, but they don't provide the service that they need to for you to be able to know whether or not the care is covered.
correct.
And that's a big problem. And I hate sending out those verifications that say we weren't able to reach the insurance company. This is what we found online. The exception is when we know the policy, we know the insurance company. And that's the other thing is, does the biller you might be working for have experience working with that payer?
Hmm.
We send thousands of claims out to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. We know how they work. We
Hmm.
know what's necessary. They require you to mail stuff. We know that. Okay, we do a mail run twice a week. Um, it's those things that you need to know. Mass Health, you have to use their website, which is ridiculously horrible. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to mention individual insurance companies,
We
but
we can
but
cut.
but but if you know that system and you have that experience, then you can do those things.
Yeah.
And it's just part of your routine. It's part of your daily plan.
Yep.
Hmm.
Toby, I don't want to leave you out hanging. Do you have any burning questions? Because I could keep going.
Ian, do you have any leverage on them? Like, if you're on hold for 5 hours and they cut you off, is that there's just nothing you can do? You just have to call back, or is there any leverage that you have on your side?
So the first thing we do is tell the providers to tell the patients that their insurance is a contract between the patient and the insurance company and maybe their employer. And if we're not able to reach the insurance company, they have an obligation to verify their benefits and find out if there's coverage. And if there is coverage, we give them a list of questions they should ask. But if the claim is not covered, we can't take responsibility for it. There's nothing we can do. And if the insurance company doesn't pick up and never answers, and you see a provider and you submit that claim and it's not paid, and you didn't verify benefits, even if the insurance company wasn't there, there's nothing we can do.
Mm.
Even when they misrepresent benefits, you get someone at an insurance company, a very large insurance company, one of the biggest in the world. Sorry, biggest in the United States. Can't say world. And their poorly trained representatives provide wrong benefits, and not just one, but three people provide wrong benefits because we'll call back again and check, is this right? Is
Uh,
this right? There's you do misrepresentation of benefits appeal, and I would say those are successful 10% of the time.
Geez.
So there's no um, a- accountability for the insurance companies.
None.
They none.
I want to shake my
So
fist.
right here, I am already shaking it. There's no accountability, and that is the tough part, too, because providers are accountable to their billing agreement, but the insurance company should also be accountable to the billing agreement. And that billing agreement says that you'll provide care, but also the insurance company is going to provide the benefit information. And
Mm.
frankly, acupuncture benefits are not available online for some companies. And that one particular company that has poorly trained representatives, they don't have acupuncture benefits online, which means that we're dependent upon the phone representatives to provide the information. And we have a situation where we will call three times and see, okay, best two out of three, which two people agree on what the benefits are. And then we tell the provider, listen, we've talked to three different people, and they told us three different stories, and that's the best we can do. Tell your patient, because the contract with the insurance company is between the patient and the
Uh,
insurance company. So if we file an appeal because of misrepresentation of benefits and it's not successful, the next level appeal is usually a patient appeal. So the patient has to be willing to step up. And that actually is important from a billing standpoint as a provider, because if you are going to be billing insurance, you have to make it crystal clear to your patients that they are responsible for the cost of care, that they're going to be responsible for paying this bill if their insurance company doesn't pay it because it's their policy and it's their insurance. There's some exceptions like Medicaid plans and stuff, but if they understand that they're responsible for paying for this bill, then when the claim is not paid, the onus is on them to go to try to get paid,
yeah.
but you bill them. Sorry, your insurance company didn't pay.
Yeah.
Here's a bill for the care. And
Which is
it's
at least nice to have recourse in that
Yeah.
regard.
so
But it's so
that
asymmetrical, right? It's
it,
so asymmetrical, right? You
it
provide the care and maybe you'll get reimbursed or not. That just seems like a tough spot to be in.
it's even worse than that, honestly, Toby,
Hmm.
because let's talk about acupuncturists as an example. If we were to measure acupuncturists on a scale of like rigidly following the rules and big softies, they tend to be
Yeah.
more on the big softy side. And that's a problem because when you're on that big softy side, you write things off. You don't charge patients. You don't tell patients they owe money. You don't collect what you should collect. And that's because there's a fear of telling a patient they owe you money. And that's a very realistic problem for those of us who are softies. And I will admit that I'm a softie. I love my patients. There are some patients who probably owe me thousands of dollars that I'll never collect because I'm not going to ask for it.
Mm.
And that's a big issue for acupuncturists. So I always say, do two things. Blame the insurance company and blame your biller. My biller says you owe me this amount of money. I don't care. They blame me. But that's why you have a biller. That's why you have someone standing behind you to do this work, because you can hold them accountable, even though they're not responsible, but you can blame them for the patient owing a balance. My billing person told me that this is how much you owe, or the insurance company says this is how much you owe based on the benefits and whatever. But there's no accountability on the insurance company side. Uh, the only exception is filing a complaint with the state, because they
Mm.
are not all, but some plans are accountable to the state for the thing. Insurance companies don't like complaints to the state.
Mm.
What would
Have you had to do
warrant a
that?
complaint? Yeah.
Have I done it?
Yeah.
I can't neither confirm nor deny that I have filed complaints with multiple states on my
Uh,
own when I was in practice on my own.
uh,
We don't file complaints for providers. We will provide them all the information they need to. In many
uh,
cases, we go above and beyond to get that information to put together or help them put together a letter about what the issues are, and um and a lot of times, and I hate to say it, a lot of times insurance companies do not want to look bad in front of the state, and they'll like cave right away, or
uh,
or nothing will happen. But it's very important to understand though, this is insurance that's regulated by the states. If you have a self-funded policy that falls under something called ERISA, E-R-I-S-S-A, one S, ERISA, these ERISA plans are regulated by the federal government. They're self-funded plans. You complain all you want to the state. It makes no difference because the state has no influence on the insurance company.
Yeah.
So what would merit a complaint to a state?
I think a big thing would be repetitive failures to follow their own guidelines or own rules.
I see.
Um, we had a situation where there was an audit. The audit said that the provider didn't do XYZ, and their requirements said that this was required and that was required and this was required. And the fact is that's not what their requirement said. That's not what the rule. That's not what Medicare guidelines say. And that's the kind of thing that would be if the insurance company is not willing to work with you, to go right to the state and say, I've worked with the insurance company. I have done this. I was audited. They took this money back, or they didn't pay me for these claims, and they're saying it's for this reason. But the problem is that this reason isn't legitimate because
Mm.
they don't have this written down anywhere. And it's a lot of work. And for this one particular provider, I have spent 30 hours working with
Wow.
this provider. Now, why? Well, two reasons. One, I hate it when the bad guys win. I just
Yeah.
can't stand it. I can't stand it because I'm here to help providers. I look at our list of providers, and I was saying before that we have a directory. We have pictures of our providers because we we are treating providers and practices. They're real people. And every claim that isn't paid is money that they don't have to pay their people or buy needles or pay their rent or rent at home or, I hate to say it, but buy food. I mean, there's a lot of issues. Each claim matters. And so taking it to the next level and going to the state is sometimes your only recourse. And we've done it, and we've been successful in some situations, and we've been unsuccessful in others.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that has to do with how good the documentation was that the provider had, how poor the documentation the insurance company had was. So there's a lot of variables inside. And if the insurance company is regulated by the state, do they want to have a black mark on their record over $3,000, which is a huge amount of money for an individual provider, but is nothing for an insurance company.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that actually gets me to another point, and I just want to bring this up.
Yeah.
One of the problems we have with chiropractors and acupuncturists, sometimes even physical therapy to a certain extent, is that we have to understand that care is subject to medical necessity. And medical necessity is like, well, what does that mean? It basically means that you have to treat the patient until they're as good as they're going to get. And the way you're going to treat them is an appropriate way to treat for that condition. So there's a lot more that goes into it. There's huge classes on it. I've talked with providers ad nauseum about it. But ultimately, if you're treating the patient every week for 52 weeks, I can guarantee the insurance company could come back and say, this is all wellness care, or this is all maintenance care.
Mm.
This shouldn't be covered. And that's where both good documentation and being aware of how you're billing is so very, very important. And in no way do I tell providers that they should make up things or they should do things that are inappropriate. But it's oftentimes a game that you have to play, that you have to make sure that you're meeting what's called medical necessity, and you're actually treating the patient in a way that's appropriate to their condition. And that's tough. And providers, I mean, listen, we're big softies, and our healing traditions are not one time and done. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even a 6 week course of treatment in many cases isn't enough for what the patients need, or 12 weeks or even 28 weeks. It just depends on what you're doing. So that meeting on medical necessity is important. And the other thing that providers are really not good at in general is having treatment plans. And the treatment plans are what you can use to help establish that medical necessity. Medical necessity is so very important, particularly if you're going to get audited, to say, hey, you're overtreating these patients. And the answer is, no, I'm not overtreating these patients because here's my records to show that I'm not. So,
Mm-hmm. Which is a lot of work for us on the provider end, I must say, as one who is a bit of a stickler for the rules.
it- so, and this gets into another aspect. So you have a biller who might cost you about a bit of money, but it's going to save you a lot of money. It might actually save you more than you've spent.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side is software. If you're taking paper notes, that's great. If you know, there's nothing wrong with paper notes, all right, at all, nothing wrong with them. But if you're using software, your software can provide so many resources to help you establish medical necessity and speed up the documentation time and speed
Mm-hmm.
up the process of getting things done. And you have to invest some time and energy into figuring out what works for you, what works for your practice, what works within the both the profession and also what's required under the CPT codes. And you can have a great source, but the fact is you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do your notes. That being said, if you have a care that's driven by a treatment plan, your notes do not have to be wild and crazy. It's like, how you doing? Are you getting better, getting worse, staying the same? All right, we're going to continue with the treatment plan, and here's what we did for the day, and here are the CPT codes. Literally, that's all you need as long as you have a plan in the beginning. And setting that up to be a course is not difficult, but it requires you to pay attention.
Gotta pay
And it's so
attention.
hard. There's no doubt you pay attention. We know you pay attention. You are the type of provider we love. And the reason why is that you're heavily involved in the billing. And that's another thing, and go back to the beginning. It's very important that your biller has a system where you can check on the status of claims. You can read the notes of what's been done. So there's transparency in the billing itself. So this claim was sent on 7/1, and on 7/28 or 8/2, we followed up, and this is the status of the claim. It's in process.
Mm-hmm.
Or, that 30-day mark is kind of like the timely processing period. We're right at that 30-day, 35 days or so, and we have all that information available for our providers. And if you have a biller who's using a system that you can't access and you can't see, your claims are lost to you. You have no idea what's happening. And that's not comforting because you don't know. The other thing, and I just want to mention this real quick, when you're billing, you should not be giving your chart note to someone to create a CPT claim for, or add CPT codes and then send out a claim form, because your claim is representative of your care. You need to be explicit in terms of what you did and what codes you want to bill. You can't be dependent upon someone else unless they're like a specialized coder who specializes in that and your notes are super clear. Otherwise, you're going to end up with two things. You're going to end up with claims with crazy diagnoses, and you're going to end up with claims that are way overpriced because you didn't pay attention to how much was being billed. So there's a couple of factors that go into that. Is did you help create that fee schedule? I never tell someone what to bill. I always give them a sample fee schedule based on their cash rates and if they offer a time service discount. And that's because it's their fee schedule. It's not my fee schedule, it's their fee schedule, and they
Mm-hmm.
should know what's being billed. And when a patient gets an EOB and you bill $800 for a visit, and I've seen it, it's like, how can you justify billing that much when your cash rate is 80? Or 100 or even 200? How can you can't justify billing $800 for the care unless you made a mistake. And so that's where owning your claims and owning your uh, that level of detail is so very important. And that's where good documentation system can help, because
Mm-hmm.
you know what you did, you know what codes to bill, and also that's where good insurance verification comes in, because you know what's covered, you
Right.
know what's not covered. And also just personal experience of saying, hey, I just can't bill this code to this insurance company, or someone who's auditing your charges you put in and say, hey, we don't recommend billing this code because it could flag the claim and you won't get paid. Or, so all of those things play into it. And so they're your claims. You need to know what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on and there's a problem, you're ultimately the one who's going to be stuck, dealing with it. If there's an audit and, the biller's not gonna, I mean, they might say, okay, I'll help you. But at the end of the day, you're the one who got paid. You're the one who did the care. You're the one who did the note. And it's your claim.
Because insurances can take their money back down the road.
They can take the money back. For the most part, they can't take it back as much as they can withhold. They can withhold the money that they say you owe from a future payment. And whenever you get a request for money back, that's something that you need to get to your biller right away and have your biller look at it and say, is this legitimate or not?
Mm-hmm.
And it, this
Well,
one
that
particular insurance
feels like
company.
a rose by any other name, right?
Yeah,
Because they're
right,
not going to take
exactly.
it back. They're just not going to pay you going
They're just
forward.
they're not gonna pay you for other care. But
Yeah.
the thing is that is the recoupment legitimate? And now we hear all these different terms, clawback, and
Hmm.
but the official term is recoupment. They're recouping funds. Is it legitimate? Did you submit a void because you billed the wrong patient on accident? It happens, it's just an administrative mistake. Or are they asking for money back because the patient had other insurance that we didn't know about, or the patient, and this is a big one for one local company, because the patient didn't respond to a letter that was sent to them of whether or not the care was related to a motor vehicle accident or personal injury. And that's something that needs to be on your intake forms. Is this care related to a motor vehicle accident or personal injury? Because that makes a huge difference. You can then clearly say, the patient reported that this was not related to that. And so when an insurance company says we want this money back, you need to go or your biller needs to look at it and say, is this legitimate? And if it's not legitimate, your biller should be the one who's doing the work to get it fixed. You shouldn't be the one doing the work to get it fixed.
I just had
It,
that happen. First time. Got one of those letters, and you guys actually caught it before I did and said, hey, this happened. And so I had
we
to go
caught it.
through.
We caught it before you.
Yeah.
That's good. We must have been right on top of things.
Yeah, you did. You got it before I did, saw, and I was because the patient didn't complete a survey.
That's exactly
So
right. It was.
so they
Yeah.
withheld, you know.
It, it's a coordination of benefits denial, and they're right now they're working on like October, November of last year. So you'll get a letter saying, this, we think there may be other insurance involved. We're going to take this money back.
Yeah,
And if you're a solo provider and you're working the office by yourself, you don't have time to call the insurance company to figure out what this means or
right.
figure out why. Or one of the other ones that we get every once in a while is, and this happens particularly out of network providers, is someone's met their deductible and then you get paid the full amount that was for the claim, and then someone else sends in a void or changes a claim, and now the deductible is owing again. And rather than taking out the future claims, they ask for money back so the patient can meet the deductible, which means you have to go back to the patient and ask for that money, and that
Right.
puts you in a really tough position.
So awkward.
It's so awkward, and it's not fair to you. But this is where you say, my biller says that you owe, or my insurance company says that you owe this money.
Oh, the insurance
Or your,
company fully gets thrown.
yeah, you gotta throw them under the bus of that
I do.
expression. Yes. So, okay.
What's the most egregious thing you've seen from the insurance companies?
So let me preface this with saying that I don't believe that insurance companies today um, are out to just throw papers away. I mean, back in the day, we're like, well, they throw every third claim away, but everything they want to do things legitimately, but their systems are put into place to help save them money. So the most egregious thing I've seen, I don't, yeah, that's a tough question. I think it's recouping money years later when someone had a personal injury and they had a settlement and the insurance company said, hey, this person had this settlement for this care, and the settlement should pay for your care, and so we want all the money we paid you back. And so now you have to go to the patient and the lawyer from 3, 4, 5 years ago and say, hey, you owe me for this care. And if you didn't know in the beginning, and you don't have a document that says they agree to what's called a lien, essentially a lien on their care, then you're the one who's left paying the insurance company back. And that's the insurance company's job, is to protect the owners of the insurance company, whether they be stockholders, whether they be the insureds. But it puts the providers in a very awkward position, particularly solo providers and small providers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And you get that letter and you want to cry.
I
You're like,
haven't gotten that letter, so thank God
no.
yet. Knock on all the wood,
You're like, this
all
is
of it.
baloney. Let me go send it over to Ian's team.
Yes,
They'll work on it.
I would 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a comfort as a person that's out there like doing all the things myself to know that I've got a resource, or it's like if I have a problem, I can be like, hey, help me. And you guys do.
We do. We try. We try to be responsive because we have that clinical background, and not just that, the practice background. I can provide practice guidance, not because I'm some practice guru, because I made those mistakes. I did that. I did exactly what you're doing, and I'm going to tell you, hey, you shouldn't do it. You should do it this way instead. Or hey, you want to make sure you have this form. Or hey, you want to make sure the patient signs this. Hey, you want to make sure you don't do X, Y, Z, because we've done it. We made those mistakes and we were practice. We started a practice during the recession. We survived. And then, of course, unfortunately, I got hurt and had to figure out what to do with my life. And I love people. I love treating people. So let's treat practices.
That's really a lovely way to look at it. It is.
We want you to feel like you're hiring like your cousin to work for you or your aunt to work for you or even a family member to work for you, that you trust they're out for your best interests, that they're there not to slack off and not do their job, but they want you to be genuinely want to be you to be successful in practice. And that's that's hard in a corporate environment and even a small company environment to maintain that. And and you've experienced this. We've actually um, we made a mistake and we made it right.
You did.
We made it right, and we made it right because it was our fault. And I say this to my kids all the time. My kids are a little bit older. I said it's not about right or wrong. It's about who's going to fix the problem. And yes, there's a certain amount of responsibility that's there, but yes, there's a certain amount of work you can do. But if you make a mistake, you just accept responsibility and deal with it. And I would rather deal with and fix a problem and maybe lose money or pay back money or whatever than lose someone who's valuable to me as both an individual, as a business and as part of my business in terms of my revenue. Your patients are important because they help you live, but they're also important to you because they're like your family or extended family that you want to know. You particularly when you're in practice a long time, you watch them get married, you watch them have kids, you watch the kids go through the years and graduate high school and then graduate from college, and you realize that you genuinely love these people. They've been with you for a long time, and you don't want to have to say, I'm sorry, I can't treat you anymore because I don't take your insurance, or hey, I don't want to, I can't treat you anymore because you're out of benefits. But I will say at the same time, those people want you to be successful and are willing to pay you. People are willing to pay you. I don't know why we're such big softies.
We are. And Toby's been really helpful in helping me be soft in the right ways, not in the like give everything away for free ways. It's hard because I can relate to that. And I think one of the harder things that happens is regarding medical necessity, where you have somebody that has an insurance, but it only covers low back pain, and they want to come in because they have menstrual pain, or you've got someone who just wants to do wellness care, and 0% of insurances cover wellness care. I mean, I don't know if it's 0%, but I haven't seen one that's just like, you can come in for anything you want. Um,
Hmm.
and having to have that conversation, being like, I would love to treat you. I just can't bill your insurance for that. And I've had folks get angry with me as if I'm, well, I had another provider that did this and that and the other
Yeah.
thing, or, isn't Chinese medicine whole person care? And it's like, absolutely, Chinese medicine is whole person care. And I will be treating all of you. However, we need a clinical focus that is based on what your insurance will pay for covering. So if that's neck pain, then we have to be focused on your neck pain while we also treat the entirety of who you are. And I have had people get very upset. And this is the insurance rules. And I'm not, I've had folks actually, and they didn't ask directly, but essentially what they're asking me for was to commit fraud, to be like, well, just bill for this and do what I want, or just say that I have this. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, you know?
It's actually even worse than that. In the sense that let's say the insurance company only pays for low back pain or neck pain, and the person's coming in for something like a knee pain. All right. Now maybe their back hurts. Okay, then they legitimately have some back pain. But if someone um, has a condition like, for example, back pain, and you treat it, then you're great. But if someone doesn't have back pain and you diagnose them with back pain, they now have that diagnosis for the rest of their lives. It's in the system. And don't think that once that insurance company knows they have back pain, that every other insurance company doesn't know as well. Prior to me becoming a chiropractor, I worked for a life insurance company. And one of the things we did was we looked at insurance records and said, hey, this person got treated for this condition, but they didn't document that condition at all. So we we're not going to cover them because they had this low back pain, which they really didn't have. So, or we're not going to insure them because, or we can't give you this job because you have back pain and this job requires you have a strong back. So there's all of these things that you can do negatively for a person by treating them in a I don't want to say sketchily kind of manner, but treating them in a manner that's not consistent with their condition. You don't
Yeah.
want to give someone a care. And I think the other thing that is very important is try to avoid mental health care diagnoses. Please, please, you are not mental health care professionals. Yes, someone can tell you they have anxiety, but treat the symptoms, okay? Don't treat the anxiety because you're not treating anxiety. You're treating the symptoms of the anxiety. And that's very important because if you're treating a patient for anxiety, F419, whatever it is, and they have anxiety, but it's a situational anxiety, and it's not really truly, they weren't diagnosed by a mental health care professional with anxiety. They're anxious because they have this test or that test, whatever the case may be. Um, Now they have this anxiety for the rest of their lives, and it's in their record. And they want to get life insurance, they want to get health insurance. They health insurance is an issue because, well, the ACA says you can't, if you have continuous care, you can't deal with prior existing conditions. Other plans don't cover that. If they're not ACA plans, they don't have to take you if you have a history of anxiety because you're a potential risk. They don't want to spend that money. So don't
So
give people mental health care
don't-
diagnoses.
I learned insomnia can be considered is one for some plans because I triggered somebody's
Yeah,
deductible by billing insomnia once. I triggered because I had a separate deductible for mental health. So that one was tricky.
that one that is tricky. I can't see that. I mean, because insomnia goes with so many other conditions. But
Yeah.
but but that's the thing is, okay, so if they have multiple conditions and you bill for insomnia, can you justify taking that insomnia diagnosis off the claim? If it was the primary diagnosis, it's kind of hard to say, no, no, we treated low back pain. But if you
Right.
treated low back pain as primary, insomnia as secondary, there's no reason why you can't take insomnia off the claim.
Yeah.
Because you're there to make sure that the patient's getting the care that they need and the care that their body needs and in a holistic manner. But ultimately, you need to bill in a compliant manner. And one diagnosis is enough. If that diagnosis meets medical necessity, then don't throw every diagnosis in the book at the claim.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Just pick one.
Sometimes I do too.
Two's okay.
Okay. One other, so I have a quasi hypothetical situation. So I've heard through the grapevine that sometimes folks have heard themselves that there have been practitioners in the past that have sort of done what you've described. So, like, someone has come in for wellness care or for something that isn't part of their insurance benefit, and they're just like, oh, they've got neck pain, oh, they've got back pain, and then just treated them anyway. And maybe it hasn't gotten figured out, right? At some point, when it does get figured out, if the insurance company does an audit, like what actually happens to the provider and what does that look like to the rest of the profession? Like, what does that do to the profession?
I won't. I'll speak to the profession in just one moment, and I can
Okay.
only talk from a chiropractic standpoint. But the first thing is documentation. Did the patient document on their intake form that they had these conditions? If they did, then you're halfway there. All right. The next thing is in your documentation, did these conditions cause functional loss and or was the patient not able to do things that they needed to do or wanted to do because of it? And did you treat them for 26 times and they're still exactly the same? So the insurance company has to figure out, okay, what is normal? What is a normal number of visits that an acupuncture patient gets? And let's say it's 12, right? The average acupuncture patient gets 12 visits. You treat someone 26 times, they're going to look at you and say, hey, we want to see your notes to make sure these visits were approved. That's a post-payment audit. So they already paid you. They're looking at it to see if whether or not you're okay. The other thing is if you're doing things that are not appropriate and you get hit with a prepayment audit, that is, they won't pay you until they review your documentation. And that documentation could include the patient history. They might want the patient history. And that means you have to have one. That's the other thing. You have to have a patient history. You have to have initial exam. You have to say, hey, care is needed. Treatment plan, really helpful. But so you have a prepayment audit, and that prepayment audit is, was this care medically necessary? Now, if it was, then you're good, then you'll eventually get paid. All right. If it was and it's good, but they decide not to pay you or they want their money back, or they don't, in prepayment, they don't pay you, then you have to fight. and file a complaint with the state, as an example. Um, that's a situation that we've seen. Now, let's go back to as a profession. I can't speak to acupuncturists specifically because it is a relatively new, profession from an insurance billing standpoint. I mean, some insurance companies just started covering acupuncture. California, they've been covering it for decades, but I will talk about from a chiropractic standpoint. In chiropractic standpoint, Medicare covers chiropractic care for very specific conditions and for a certain number of visits based on a diagnosis. And there's no set number of visits. So the Medicare had a contractor that did an audit, and the audit came back that 93% of the care that was provided was wellness care or maintenance care. Now, that's very damning evidence to say that you're not practicing in a way that's consistent. But what it really was a wake-up call saying, your documentation stinks. And you do need to keep in mind that patients have to have medical necessity, that you have to meet that medical necessity requirement to continue to treat them. You can't just continue treatment, you have to let them go. So a lot of the Medicare contractors did a lot of audits and went back and looked at notes, and they asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars back in many cases. I know providers who've fought these and lost and fought them and won. But what does it do to the profession? It makes the profession look like you're a bunch of scumbags. I don't
Mm.
want to use that term. Um, Now we practice in New York. New York has quite a few what are called mills, personal injury mills, and work comp mills not so much because work comp is highly regulated in New York, but a personal injury mill is where an attorney sets up a relationship with a provider to establish the treatment of care. And that treatment of care establishes that the person was legitimately injured and the person gets care. Eventually, there's some sort of lawsuit in the settlement. The question is, was that care because the patient wanted to generate more revenue for for the patient, or was it in fact care that was medically necessary
Mm.
and the patient needed it? And there's two sides to every coin, as we say, and certainly there are inappropriate things on one end, but there are pretty legitimate injuries on the other side. It doesn't take much to get hurt in a car accident. And I will say that one of the reasons why I don't practice as a chiropractor is because I had 3 car accidents in 10 years. So
Mm.
there's legitimate ways. So what does that mean? That means I've lost my profession. I lost my job. Very, very tough for me to accept. But was I getting care regularly to see if I could get better? I was. But there's a certain point at which I'm just not going to get any better. And that's when you stop care. And that whole idea of terminating care is so foreign to those of us who practice in a manner that means that you get the care that your body needs, not the care that's necessarily medically necessary. And that's that tradition, that treatment tradition of essentially maintenance or wellness care doesn't work in a Western model. Yet we still try and cram it in there,
Yeah.
and patients still expect it. And I had a conversation earlier today with someone that a particular insurance company only pays a certain dollar amount for claims, and you can balance bill the patient. You're in network, but you can balance bill the patient up to the allowed amount. This only works if you communicate with the patient ahead of time and the patient understands that they are responsible for X number of dollars, that they're going to have to pay X number of dollars. That's where the communication comes in with the patient ahead of time saying, hey, we have X number of visits from the insurance company. Let's try this short period of treatment. Let's try it. Treatment plan says we're going to try 6 visits. We'll treat you for 6 visits. We'll reassess where you are. And that assessment can be something as simple as, hey, I could pick up my grandkids and I couldn't pick them up before. Functional thing, something that's actually important, particularly if you have little grandkids. Or I can walk without falling down. And I will tell you that those of us who have falling problems, that's a win. If you
Hmm.
can say I didn't fall down today, that is a win.
Yeah.
If you have that treatment plan in place and you have those goals as part of the treatment plan, that's a whole nother a whole nother thing about medical necessity. But then you tell the patient, hey, once you get to the point where you're as good as you're going to get, we have to stop care because you're now no longer medically necessary. Care is no longer medically necessary for you. But we'd love to continue to treat you. We'd love for you to get that and maintain that level that where you're at. But that is maintenance care, and your insurance company doesn't pay for it. But here's how we can help you pay for it, or here's what we can do to help you figure out what works best for you and your body, and have that discussion at the beginning. Say,
Hmm.
listen, your insurance covers this much. They only cover care that is medically necessary. That is that you're going to get better. Once you get as good as you're going to get, we have to stop care. And at that point, you can decide if you want to continue with maintenance care and letting the patient know ahead of time. Care is not forever. They may have seen another acupuncturist who just treated them once a week for 52 weeks in a year, but unless that insurance company is willing to pay for maintenance care, you just can't justify that.
Yep. Before we close, Toby, do you have any other questions? I see we're getting close to our hour here.
Yeah, I have a few, but I'm gonna keep them for next time when Ian visits us.
Oh, good. We'll get to have him back again if he wants to come back.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Well, I think that our biggest concern and our biggest issue is that we have a hard time figuring out where we fit in the medical model, and we've placed ourselves in a box that prevents us from billing patients out of pocket for care that is appropriate for their condition but not covered by insurance. And because patients expect that they have these visits and this care, that they are not going to have to pay anything or only pay their copay, and that's an education component, and that's educating our fellow providers. That's educating new grads coming out of school. That's helping existing providers who've been doing things a certain way and understand, hey, that's not really the way to do it. So there's a lot that goes into this profession of chiropractic and acupuncture, this holistic medicine idea, if you want to use that term, that we need to educate our providers to say, hey, you got to do it a certain way to show that this care is needed, because we want you to be successful. We want you to help people for the rest of their lives, but we want you to do it in a way that's not going to jeopardize everyone else's ability to stay in practice and everyone else's ability to stay in insurance. Um, and and I just want to end with, I I love to educate the providers that we work with. But at the same time, I hate disappointing providers. And there is a certain level of disappointment that comes with learning that they can't do certain things that they want to do. But it's kind of like the tough love approach to, practice. Hey, this is all you can do. I would love to be back sometime if you'll have
Yay.
me, but there's so many little things that acupuncturists, chiropractors can do to help establish a medical necessity, help show that the care is needed, and it doesn't take much. It just takes a line or two in their notes, and it takes an extra form the patient fills out, and it takes, doing re-exams. If you don't get paid for them, doing little re-exams and establishing changes. And if we do those things, then we can show that the care we need is medically necessary, and then we can show that we are responsible providers and working within the scope of our practice and the scope of what the insurance company is going to pay for, and they're not going to drop acupuncture as a benefit. Do it the right way, and we'll all be happy.
Thanks so much, Ian, for being here with us.
My pleasure.
And,
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, Ian.
My pleasure.
all
Have
right,
a
we'll
wonderful
see you
day.
next time.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.